You wake up and believe fat loss begins with diet or exercise. But the most important metabolic decision of your day happens before breakfast. Within minutes of opening your eyes, your brain activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Adrenocorticotropic hormone is released. Your adrenal glands respond by secreting cortisol. This is called the cortisol awakening response. It is designed to mobilize energy and increase alertness. In healthy physiology, cortisol rises sharply and then gradually declines. But modern morning habits exaggerate this spike. You grab your phone. You check notifications. You rush mentally into work problems. You drink coffee immediately. Your brain interprets this as threat. Sympathetic nervous system activity increases. Cortisol remains elevated instead of falling. Visceral fat is densely packed with glucocorticoid receptors. It is biologically sensitive to stress hormones. When cortisol remains high, lipolysis is suppressed. Insulin sensitivity decreases. Even if you eat clean later, the hormonal environment has already shifted towards storage. Fat loss does not begin in the gym. It begins in the first hour after you wake up. In this video, you will understand how a simple Japanese-style morning routine can lower cortisol naturally. You will learn how hydration, sunlight, movement, and timing can shift insulin and cortisol in your favor. And you will see how protecting the morning can unlock visceral fat burning without extreme dieting. The moment you wake, your brain initiates a programmed hormonal surge. The hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland. The pituitary releases adrenocorticotropic hormone into circulation. The adrenal cortex then secretes cortisol. This cortisol awakening response is not harmful by itself. It is necessary. It increases blood glucose through gluconeogenesis. It raises blood pressure slightly. It prepares the body for activity. The problem begins when this spike is amplified. Psychological stimulation immediately after waking intensifies hypothalamic signaling. Emails, social media alerts, and urgent thoughts increase sympathetic tone. Cortisol rises higher and stays elevated longer. Cortisol activates enzymes such as phosphoenolpyruvate carboxygenase in the liver. Hepatic glucose output increases. The pancreas releases insulin to control this rise. Insulin inhibits hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase is required to release fatty acids from adipose tissue. When insulin remains elevated, lipolysis is suppressed. Visceral adipose tissue expresses high levels of 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 1. This enzyme converts inactive cortisone into active cortisol locally. That means abdominal fat amplifies stress signals internally. Chronic elevation of morning cortisol has been associated with increased central adiposity in PubMed-indexed research. If the cortisol spike is clean and brief, it declines naturally. If it is exaggerated, fat storage signaling dominates the day. The goal is not to eliminate cortisol. The goal is to regulate its rhythm. Step 1: Hydration and the adrenal reset. After 7 to 8 hours of sleep, your body is mildly dehydrated. You lose water through respiration and perspiration during the night. Plasma volume decreases. Blood becomes slightly more concentrated. Even mild dehydration increases sympathetic nervous system activity. Heart rate rises. Cortisol secretion increases as a compensatory response. Your adrenal glands rely on proper electrolyte balance. Sodium and potassium gradients influence cellular signaling and blood pressure stability. If plasma volume is low, the body perceives strain. Many people wake and immediately consume coffee. Caffeine stimulates cortisol release further. Now you are stacking stimulation on top of dehydration. Research published through knee-supported hydration studies shows that fluid restriction elevates cortisol levels measurably. Rehydration is not simply about thirst. It is about signaling safety to the nervous system. Drinking a large glass of room-temperature water restores plasma volume. Adding a small pinch of salt supports sodium balance. This stabilizes blood pressure and reduces unnecessary adrenal activation. When hydration improves, sympathetic tone decreases. Cortisol amplitude lowers naturally. Lower morning cortisol reduces stress-driven hepatic glucose output. Insulin remains more stable. Lipolysis remains accessible. Hydration is not dramatic, but it is foundational. Before stimulation, restore internal balance. Fat burning begins with stability, not intensity. Step 2: Morning sunlight and your metabolic clock. Your metabolism does not run randomly. It runs on a circadian rhythm controlled by the brain. The master clock is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It sits in the hypothalamus. It regulates cortisol, melatonin, insulin sensitivity, and body temperature. If this clock is out of sync, cortisol patterns become distorted. You may feel tired yet wired. Evening cortisol may stay elevated. Visceral fat storage becomes more likely. Artificial indoor light is too weak to properly anchor this system. Phone screens and LED bulbs do not provide sufficient lux intensity. They confuse the brain rather than synchronize it. Natural sunlight is different. Light enters the eye and activates retinal ganglion cells. Signals travel through the retinohypothalamic tract to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This produces a clean cortisol peak followed by an organized decline. It increases daytime serotonin production. Serotonin later converts into melatonin at night. Better melatonin improves deep sleep. Deep sleep increases growth hormone secretion. Growth hormone supports lipolysis and visceral fat reduction. Research in the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology links circadian disruption with metabolic syndrome and abdominal adiposity. Stepping outside within 30 minutes of waking resets this clock. 5 to 10 minutes of natural light without sunglasses is sufficient. A synchronized clock produces predictable hormonal rhythms. Predictable rhythms lower chronic cortisol exposure. Lower cortisol improves fat mobilization. Light is not cosmetic. It is metabolic instruction. Step 3. Delay caffeine and stabilize adenosine. During sleep, a molecule called adenosine accumulates in your brain. Adenosine creates sleep pressure and promotes rest. When you wake up, adenosine levels are still elevated. Your body naturally clears it over time. Cortisol rises in a controlled way to help you feel alert. If you drink coffee immediately, caffeine blocks adenosine receptors. You feel awake quickly, but the adenosine is still present. When caffeine wears off, adenosine binds rapidly. You experience an energy crash. The brain perceives fatigue as stress. This triggers another cortisol spike. Repeated spikes increase total daily cortisol exposure. Higher cortisol promotes hepatic gluconeogenesis. Insulin rises again to regulate glucose. Insulin inhibits hormone-sensitive lipase. Fat mobilization remains suppressed. Waiting approximately 90 minutes allows adenosine to decline naturally. Cortisol completes its natural morning curve. The nervous system stabilizes. When coffee is consumed after this window, stimulation is smoother. There is less crash. There is less compensatory cortisol release. Lower cumulative cortisol improves insulin sensitivity. Improved insulin sensitivity enhances lipolysis. Caffeine is not the enemy. Timing determines whether it supports or disrupts your hormonal rhythm. Step 4. Walking in the optic flow safety signal. Many people believe intense morning exercise accelerates fat loss. But if cortisol is already elevated, high-intensity training may amplify stress. High-intensity intervals increase catecholamines such as adrenaline and noradrenaline. They also elevate cortisol acutely. In a well-recovered state, this is beneficial. In a chronically stressed state, it prolongs sympathetic dominance. A better morning strategy is gentle forward walking. When you walk outside, the visual field moves past your eyes. This is called optic flow. Optic flow sends a safety signal to the amygdala. The amygdala regulates fear and stress perception. Reduced amygdala activation lowers sympathetic output. Cortisol begins to decline more efficiently. Walking also activates skeletal muscle contraction. Muscle contraction stimulates GLUT4 translocation to the cell membrane. This allows glucose uptake independent of large insulin spikes. Blood glucose stabilizes without excessive insulin release. Lower insulin means hormone-sensitive lipase can function. Lipolysis remains available. 10 to 15 minutes of calm walking in natural light combines circadian reset with nervous system regulation. Gentle movement tells your brain that you are safe. Safety lowers cortisol. Lower cortisol allows visceral fat to become metabolically accessible. Intensity has its place, but calm consistency in the morning builds the hormonal foundation for fat burning. Step 5. Delay your phone and protect dopamine. The first 30 minutes after waking are neurologically sensitive. Your prefrontal cortex is still stabilizing. Your autonomic nervous system is setting its baseline for the day. If you immediately open social media or email, your brain is flooded with stimuli. Notifications create unpredictable dopamine spikes. Uncertainty activates the locus coeruleus. Norepinephrine release increases. This reinforces sympathetic nervous system dominance. Cortisol secretion remains elevated. Even small stress signals accumulate. Repeated microspikes of cortisol across days promote central fat retention. Dopamine instability also increases reward-seeking behavior. Later in the day, cravings intensify. Insulin regulation becomes more erratic. Protecting the first 30 minutes allows parasympathetic tone to establish dominance. Breathing slows naturally. Heart rate variability improves. Cortisol declines along its natural curve. A calm neurological baseline lowers total daily stress load. Lower stress load reduces chronic activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. You are not avoiding technology permanently. You are protecting a critical hormonal window. When cortisol is controlled early, insulin stability improves later. When insulin stabilizes, lipolysis becomes sustainable. The morning sets the metabolic tone. Guard it carefully. Visceral fat is not a discipline problem. It is a stress response. When cortisol remains chronically elevated, the body prioritizes survival. Hepatic gluconeogenesis increases. Insulin rises. Hormone-sensitive lipase is inhibited. Fat storage dominates over fat release. Lower the threat signal, and physiology shifts. Hydrate to stabilize plasma volume. Use sunlight to synchronize the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Delay caffeine to protect adenosine rhythm. Walk calmly to reduce amygdala activation. Protect your brain from early dopamine overload. These steps lower total cortisol exposure. Lower cortisol improves insulin sensitivity. Improved insulin sensitivity permits lipolysis. Your body is adaptive. When it perceives safety, it releases stored energy. If you have diabetes, hypoglycemia, adrenal disorders, thyroid disease, kidney disease, or take medications affecting cortisol or insulin, consult your physician before changing caffeine timing, electrolyte intake, or fasting habits. Avoid extreme restriction and aggressive routines. Gradual adjustment respects physiology. If this changed how you view your mornings, subscribe to What Science Reveals. Because when you understand your hormones, fat loss becomes a biological consequence rather than a constant fight.